Hi everyone, I'm Maria McLachlan and this is part 3 of my response to Jamie and Shaaba's video attacking J.K. Rowling. I want to emphasise that there is nothing in that video that I think has any merit whatsoever as an argument or rebuttal to anything J.K. Rowling says, but it is a very long video, very full, and for the sake of my sanity and probably everyone else's, I have to be very selective in what I choose to respond to. Now, in her essay, J.K. gives 5 reasons why she is worried about what she calls the new transactivism. And what I'm focusing on in this video is Jamie and Shaaba's response to reason number 4. So here we go.
The 4th reason she uses for being concerned is the huge explosion in young women who wish to transition. This is also false, and to be honest, quite misleading.
No, it isn't false. There is a wealth of evidence that there has been a massive rise in young people of both sexes, but especially girls, wanting to transition. The website of GIDS, the Gender Identity Development Service, which sees people under the age of 18 in England and Wales, links to this paper, which tells us that there has been a large increase in the number of children and adolescents wishing to develop a body that is congruent with their gender feelings. The total number of children and young people referred to the GIDS has risen exponentially since 2011. The striking feature of this increase is the large proportion of birth-registered females from 2011 onwards. This increase and the change in sex ratio is also seen in other countries. Talking of other countries, I strongly recommend the Trans Train documentaries from Sweden, which if you haven't seen them, I will link to them below. Here is a short clip from the first one, which actually looks at Norway.
I Norge har Rikshospitalets mottagning för transbarn sett precis samma kraftiga ökning av tonårsflickor. Och här finns det en oro för vad det innebär. För man har också sett något annat som kännetecknar den nya gruppen.
Så de siste 5 årene, fra ungefär 2012, så har det vært en enorm økning. Og det vi ser er jo at, ja, igjen at det er tonårstjejer vi har flest av. Men også så ser vi at denne gruppen er de som er biologisk fødte tjejer, bare biologisk fødte killer. Og da ser man at i tonårsgruppen av de biologisk fødte tjejene, så er det over halvparten, opp mot 60% som har kompleks psykisk uhelse. Altså da har de enten med seg svåre traumer med PTSD, posttraumatisk stressyndrom, det er autismespektrum.
Okay, I don't think I need to go into any more detail about that because frankly, although Shaaba says the claim that there is a huge explosion in young women who wish to transition is false, neither she nor Jamie provide anything in support of that statement, nothing that undermines the claim. And it's very curious that they should say it's false and misleading. Instead, they do this.
Wishing to transition makes it sound like a voluntary desire. I wish I had equal boobs. I wish I was 5 inches taller.
There is no such thing as a voluntary desire. You either desire something or you don't. You don't choose whether or not to desire something. Shaaba seems to be suggesting that the word wish is only appropriate for relatively trivial desires. And I think what she's trying to do here is make it look as if JK is trivializing the whole issue of transitioning. And Jamie labours this moot point even further.
I wish I had curlier hair, but I didn't wish to transition, I needed to. It wasn't a wish, it wasn't a choice, it was a massive life-altering thing that I had to do. If I could have avoided doing this, I would have.
So we're told that Jamie needed to transition, had to do this massive life-altering thing, but we're not told why. We are left to fill in the gaps, to guess what might have happened had Jamie not transitioned, and there's a strong implication that it would have been terrible. Lifelong unhappiness, depression, suicide even. But it's still a wish. Wishing is a neutral term that says nothing of the reasons why you might wish for something, nothing about what is driving that wish, whether it's something somewhat frivolous like having curly hair or something that feels as if one's life depends on it. But can you imagine if J.K. Rowling had said there is a huge explosion in young women who need to transition? As if, without knowing anything about them, she had decided that their mental health or even their actual lives were in jeopardy if they couldn't get on to those puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. That would be making a massive assumption that she has no business making, and which would make her look pretty stupid given that an increasing number of these young women do live to regret their decision. Talking of which,
J.K. Rowling also says there's increased numbers of detransitioners, sometimes after taking irreversible steps. Again, no citations. The detransition rate is actually really low. Who's right? You decide. Look at the facts.
Do you know how many people as a percentage detransition? 0.5%. 0.5%. Does this sound like a lot to you? Falsified media reports do exactly what J.K. Rowling is doing right here. They are inflating statistics and sensationalizing, and it is not okay.
one of Shaaba and Jamie's tactics is to carp on about JK's lack of citations while claiming to provide citations for every factual claim they make. Did you see the citation that flashed on the screen as Shaaba claimed that the detransition rate was 0.5%? Although they do provide a link to a page of their references, I'll wager that few viewers bothered to check that one out or any of the others for that matter. Well, I did, and I conclude that using it to assert that the rate of detransition is only 0.5% is disingenuous, to put it very charitably, and it is not okay. The citation doesn't refer to a peer-reviewed paper, but to the content of a poster used at a poster session at an EPATH conference in 2019. EPATH is the European Professional Association for Transgender Health. The poster tells us that the method used to arrive at that statistic was to gather patient assessment reports for patients attending a gender identity clinic for 1 year between 2016 and 2017 and to scan those reports for words related to detransition or regret. In other words, the criterion was that the patient had to say something about detransition or regret at an appointment within a 1 year time frame, and for this to be recorded in their assessment. An obvious limitation, one that is acknowledged in the study's conclusion, is that it relied on self-reported experiences of patients who may not have disclosed information relevant to this study in their appointments. It also mentions that although some people have regrets, they might not detransition as a result, and therefore they would have no need to broach the subject. Another limitation that it doesn't mention, and neither do Shaaba and Jamie, of course, is that people often detransition without telling their therapists and doctors. Kerry Callahan is a detransition advocate who halted her transition after just 2 years, just under 2 years, I think, in 2014, and who has written extensively about the subject ever since. She says that the majority of detransitioners she knows of do not seek medical professional help when detransitioning, so there is no record of their having done so. They get advice from each other, and this is borne out by their internet communities on Tumblr and Reddit and places like that. The Reddit Detransitioners Forum, or subreddit as it's called, now has well over 16,000 members. There are a few articles on PubMed that are about detransition. This one says detransition is a growing phenomenon that implies clinical, psychological and social issues. Inadequate evaluation and use of medicalization as the only means to improve gender dysphoria may lead to later detransition in some teenagers. You don't say. Here is a clarion call for more research, as there exists very little. And one person who knows that all too well is James Caspian, whose research proposal on this very topic was turned down by Bath Spa University, reportedly because an ethics subcommittee warned that quotes, potentially politically incorrect piece of research carries a risk to the university. Attacks on social media may not be confined to the researcher, but may also involve the university.
The university said, oh, no, you can't do the research because the university might be criticised and that would be unacceptable, and they said it is better not to offend people.
The truth is that we don't know what the detransition rate is. We do know that more people are seeking to transition, so it stands to reason that a greater number will be seeking to detransition in future. By the way, on my website at peaktrans.org, there is a page full of links to articles and personal stories about detransition and regret, and funnily enough, it is by far the most viewed page on my website. Nearly everyone arrives there from searching detransition on Google or other search engines.
Did you also know that in a study of over 2,000 people in the UK, over 83% of people said that they regretted plastic surgery? 83%! That's significantly higher than the 0.5% who detransition. Does that mean we should stop people from getting plastic surgery then?
Oh, gotcha. I mean, checkmate. Let's just pack up and go home, shall we? Oh, but hang on a minute. JK isn't saying that we should stop people from transitioning or even anything close to that, is she? That's just a straw man. Gotcha.
She finishes here by saying that some decide to transition after realising that they're same-sex attracted and that their transition was driven by homophobia.
There are plenty of accounts from young lesbians who eventually realised this was largely what drove their wish to transition. In the Times last year, 5 clinicians who had resigned from the Gender Identity Development Service as a matter of conscience said, "It feels like conversion therapy for gay children." I frequently had cases where people started identifying as trans after months of horrendous bullying for being gay. Young lesbians considered at the bottom of the heap suddenly found they were really popular when they said they were trans. We heard a lot of homophobia, which we felt nobody was challenging. A lot of the girls would come in and say, "I'm not a lesbian. I fell in love with my best girlfriend, but then I went online and realised I'm not a lesbian, I'm a boy." Phew. Several clinicians suspected that some of the transgender adolescents were reacting to homophobia at home. For some families, it was easier to say, "This is a medical problem, here's my child, please fix them," than dealing with a young gay kid. At the service's family days, a parent was allegedly heard saying that they did not want their child to have gay friends because they didn't want them mixed up in that hedonistic lifestyle. We had so many families who would talk about not wanting their daughters to be lesbian. Young people repeatedly confided their own disgust that they may be gay.
We've already addressed that there is more significant transphobia than homophobia.
Not in Iran, mate. But what possible bearing does the observation that there is more transphobia than homophobia have on the fact that it is indeed homophobia that is driving some young people's transition? Look up fallacies of irrelevance. This one is what's known as a red herring.
Even within the LGBT plus community, there's an entire alliance created against trans people for LGBT cis people.
Why is it that everyone who just wants something for themselves, something that doesn't prioritise trans people's feelings and needs and rights over their own, has to be called anti-trans? Don't be so pathetic. Again, on my website, I happen to have a page about gay and lesbian erasure, which links to many articles by or about gay people who are fed up to the back teeth of this. It is for them that the LGB Alliance was created by gay people, and in spite of a massive amount of time and energy by certain trans activists and trans allies in defaming them and trying to get them cancelled, they are proving hugely popular and spreading to many other countries. It's an initiative that started here in the UK, and another reason I'm so proud of everyone involved in the fight back in this country against pseudo-fascists that don't think gay people should have their own organisation.
J.K. Rowling goes on to say that autistic girls are overrepresented. It's a very low blow and somewhat ableist to imply that people with autism can't be knowledgeable on their own identity.
She neither says nor implies that people with autism can't be knowledgeable about their own identities, and it's a low blow to sneak in a suggestion that she's ableist for reporting what she has read and understood as a fact. This is gaslighting taken to a whole new level.
She again also didn't cite this and is seeming to try to imply that maybe autistic people transition more. I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? She's not seeming to try to imply it. She's telling us quite clearly what she understands to be a fact because it is widely reported as one. The paper I cited about JIDS states that about 35% of referred young people present with moderate to severe autistic traits.
We actually found a paper that looked at this.
Yes, and the very first thing that paper said is autistic traits are overrepresented in transgender populations and gender variance is high in autistic individuals. Furthermore, some evidence suggests that the autism/transgender overlap is limited to individuals sex assigned female. By the way, remember that clip from the Swedish documentary I showed earlier? In conclusion, suggesting that J.K. Rowling is ableist is uncalled for and reflects very poorly on the pair of them. But then the whole video does that. As we've seen in this part of my response to it, Jamie and Shaaba make a number of assertions and give the impression that they are supported by scientific studies when they're not, while having a few gratuitous and unpleasant digs at J.K. Rowling's integrity. I'll be back soon to tie up a few loose ends on the fourth and final part of this response. Thanks for watching. Bye.